pong and other disciplines, while Chinese pupils will benefit from football training with their Ghanaian counterpart. Now, the first group participating this year from Ghana are 15 children from the SOS Children's Village. Now, this experience is anticipated to make a positive impact on the lives of the participating children. Now, the statement says that Star Times Corporation offered to provide football kits for the children because of the association with Ghana football. And it is worthy noting that, and it must be stated that it was not at the instance of the foundation, which is the Rebecca Foundation. The support was publicly announced and it was purely for charitable purposes. It is worth emphasizing that neither the First Lady nor the foundation has any role to play in any engagement between Star Times and the government of Ghana, either directly or indirectly. Gifty. Okay, so these are facts according to the Rebecca Foundation stated in the release that they sent. But member of NDC MP Ras Mubarak disagrees with this. He joins me on the line, so we'll engage him on that. Hello, Mr. Mubarak. Hello, Mr. Mubarak. Well, he'll be joining us on the line now to explain why he thinks that this gesture amounts to conflict of interest. Mr. Mubarak, do I have you there? Okay. Well, earlier we've been speaking to him about what he thought this whole process meant.
It has the full trappings of conflict of interest. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And the statement she's put out there clearly a standard response. Oh, there's no conflict of interest. We did it for charity. That is standard response, because clearly you don't expect them to come and say they wrote to Star Times and solicited for assistance from Star Times. And you clearly do not expect the Office of a First Lady to tell you they may have put in a word with the Minister for Communications to facilitate an enhanced agreement with Star Times China.
So what would you propose must be done given the fact that there's this conflict of interest hanging around this whole deal?
Full disclosure from the Office of the First Lady and full disclosure from the Ministry of Communications.
Full disclosure, he says. Ras Mubarak joins me on the line. Mr. Mubarak, thank you very much for your time here on Top Story. Full disclosure, you've seen the statement, I believe, have you?
Good evening, Gifty. I have seen the statement, and indeed, it is nothing short of a standard response from the First Lady's office. What we are raising is about standards. It's about good governance. And Gifty, if the First Lady of the Republic and the President are busy hobnobbing with executives of Star Times, and all of a sudden a government ministry immediately signs an MOU to award a contract to Star Times China, you tell listeners whether that isn't problematic, And I think this is not the way to go as a country. Instead of the minister, moving and hopping from station or media house to the other, she should be meeting with a committee on communications of Parliament to brief us thoroughly, because we are picking up snippets of information from the media, and it feeds into the claims by many people that the minister does not seem to take the views of stakeholders seriously. And we've seen that in the way she's conducted herself, over many issues that have come up in the media in respect of things under her ministry.
Mubarak, you have said that there are grounds, reasonable grounds, that points towards conflict of interest. What are these?
First of all, you must understand that the First Lady is not a public officer, so you can't, haul her before shrug or the rest of it. But I'm saying that it looks very, very dubious, to the extent that the minister, immediately after the First Lady's visit to China, all of a sudden activated contacts with Star Times China. And I can't be convinced that somebody hasn't put in a good word for the ministry to award a contract to Star Times China. In any case, has KNET, which originally executed the project after Star Times had, failed to deliver on its share of the contract, been invited to submit bids that KNET failed to submit? Or have they opened this enhanced agreement to competitive bidding?
This is one government that made a whole lot of noise while in opposition about the fact that we can't subject everything to sole sourcing. All of a sudden, we are seeing in every aspect, in just about everything that the ministry is undertaking, indications of sole sourcing.
Mr. Mubarak, hold on for me. Let's deal with this issue of conflict of interest that you raised. For example, we've been trying to get the Deputy Minister of Communication, George Anda, to take his comment and to take the ministry's comment on this. As and when we're successful, but we do have Martin Kpebu, who is a private legal practitioner. Let me find out from Mr. Kpebu. Thank you very much for your time here on Top Story. Let me begin by asking you whether or not you see any grounds of conflict of interest in all of these.
Not yet. I don't see the grounds yet. We'll need more facts. So at best, right now, the current set of facts don't show conflict yet. You see, in order to ground conflict, you must show that the donation of the items has something to do with the cabinet approval. So there must be a nexus which must be established in order for us to say there is conflict. But so far, you see, Mr. Mubarak himself stated that he needs full disclosure. So maybe you need more investigations to be able to unravel more facts. But on these bare facts, it's difficult to make a claim of conflict of interest.
Okay. Does this in any way, and based on the statement that the Rebecca Foundation has published today, I don't know if you've listened to the details, but do you see anything there that contravenes the gift policy?
That is where we should be looking at, because you see, strictly speaking, the First Lady is not a government official, but a certain practice has evolved where we use state resources to take care of the First Lady's office and all that. So practically, we might as well just make the office officially a public office. Then all the rules can apply. But as far as I'm aware, it isn't that it's not part of the public service as established in the Constitution. So the rules for us, we need more time to unravel that. In this case, since the First Lady is not strictly speaking a public officer.
Well, hold on for me, Mr. Kpebu. Mr. Mubarak, coming back to you. I don't know if this gives you any clarification or if this gives you any ideas as to how to proceed with your request.
Well, I'm of the opinion that the Ministry of Communications would have to do a lot more than they have done, which is full disclosure of the facts inherent in the MOU with StarTimes China. And again, the Office of the First Lady would have to give us a lot of details. At what point did they begin to engage StarTimes either for the facilitation of the donations that she made reference to in her release? And we also need to take into consideration the timelines. You know, at what point did the ministry write to StarTimes China to begin to reactivate, if you like, a relationship that had gone very, very sour. And this is coming at the heels of the fact that StarTimes had reneged in fulfilling its contractual obligations in the past. And if the Ministry of Communications, all of a sudden, after the First Lady's visit, is reactivating that relationship, awarding a contract or signing or entering an agreement with StarTimes, clearly it raises a lot of questions than provide answers. And these are things that we would have to interrogate further. But clearly, where to lay bare the facts is Parliament, which is the people's, where the people of Ghana are best represented. The minister has made zero attempts to meet with the committee responsible for communications. And that is why, you know, those of us from our side find us very slighting to Parliament as a whole.
But Mr. Mubarak, we gather that there's going to be a meeting on Wednesday over this issue. The committee is having a meeting on Wednesday on this issue.
The committee is going to be meeting on Wednesday to discuss its activities. There's no indication that the committee would be meeting the minister or would be discussing the StarTimes issues. You know, and I find it too late in the day that all of these things have gone on in the media, discussions have been made, and the minister has gone from one media house to the other discussing it.
instead of engaging the committee responsible for communications.
So for those
to
of
brief
you,
the committee properly.
So for those of you on the committee, to what extent are you going to get the minister to answer these questions that you're raising?
She could be invited. She could be summoned. Indeed, the committee has the powers of a high court. And we have made attempts to reach the chairman of the committee that if she does not voluntarily, appear before the committee to brief the committee, not just on the issue of StarTimes, but many other issues that have gone on at the ministry, at the blind side of the committee, we may have to consider subpoena to get the minister to come and respond to those issues.
But given that this did not even come to Parliament in the first place, does it not suffice that this is more like an executive instrument that just passes?
At some point, eventually, it would have to come to Parliament because it has a bearing on the public purse. It has a bearing on the consolidated fund. There's going to be some loan component on the agreement. And if there is, it is the ordinary Ghanaian who would be fulfilling those obligations of paying for it. And I don't see how the minister could even entertain providing an enhanced agreement with StarTimes without passing it through, without giving the respect to the Committee on Communications by discussing these things with the committee.
Okay. Mr. Mubarak, thank you very much for your time. Let me come to you, Mr. Kpebu, for your final thoughts on this and the way it's going. What do you see going forward?
Well, I think, number one, it tells that while we are getting more citizens and more spectators, it's good. It's good that somebody is able to make this connection, that's to say the donation to the First Lady's office. It's not the best, okay, but it doesn't necessarily measure up to a legal infraction, that is to say the conflict of interest. But certainly, you can see that as human beings, some things may not exactly fall short of the legal standards, but they may still not be right, you see. So definitely, you see, to the extent that the donation is hanging at this time, it would be best that the First Lady returns it. Yes, they would have to. And then, as you mentioned rightly, the office of the First Lady will need to streamline legislation so that if we are making it sort of a public office, even if we don't say public office, to the extent that we are using the taxpayers' money to run the First Lady's office, we should make it amenable to the same rules that public officers are amenable to, so that we can make progress as a nation.
Okay. Mr. Kpebu, thank you so much for your time this evening. Martin Kpebu is a private legal practitioner. We also heard Ras Mubarak, who is a member of the Parliament Communications Committee. Let's wrap this up by finding out what went on in Parliament and what Parliament is doing about this situation. Joseph Opoku-Gakpo is our parliamentary correspondent. He was in Parliament today. Joseph.
So the leadership at the level of the minority, specifically the chief whip and the minority, the deputy whip, they've given the indication that they've asked their members at the communications committee to get the minister show up at that level to respond to questions on that, as Ras Mubarak rightly indicated. But he again hinted that if they find the responses that will come at the level of the communications committee not satisfactory enough, they are ready and willing to take it a notch higher. They would get the minister summoned to appear before Parliament in the form of questions, which is usually done in all the other areas when issues come up and require attention. And so once they don't get the satisfactory answers at the level of the communications committee, they would be ready and willing to do that even before the House goes on break.
But the minister was not expected to be in Parliament today.
No, and I didn't spot her in Parliament today either. The chairman of that committee is actually Kennedy Ohene-Agyapong, who was present in Parliament today. And this conversation has been ongoing in terms of what should be done with the StarTimes deal, even among members of the committee we gather. And as Ras Mubarak indicated, that meeting that's coming up on Wednesday, one of the details we're gathering is that this would end up being top of the agenda when the committee meets on Wednesday. Top
of the agenda. We'll see how that goes. Joseph Opoku-Gakpo is our parliamentary correspondent. But we're making attempts to reach the Minister for Information designate, Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah, on this matter, see if we can get some information from him as well. Mr. Oppong-Nkrumah, are you there?
Hello.
Hello, good evening. Thank you very much for your time here on Top Story. I believe you are following the discussion?
Yes, I am.
Very well. What more should we know? The minority, Ras Mubarak, who's a member of Parliament, a member of the committee, Communications Committee in Parliament, is seeking full disclosure.
But I think that is the process. Parliament gives you a platform where when you don't have clarity on something and you want more information, you file a question before the entire House, or you at your committee level engage the stakeholders. We do not encourage a practice where you go out there and throw all sorts of allegations out there, muddy the waters, and then you now come back to Parliament to file a question. That is not how we do things. And I think that all of us must do well to follow the due process in this enterprise. Parliament is a good platform to ask questions, and if indeed the minority wants answers to questions, that is the right place to ask the questions. But you notice that these questions are now coming after the fact, after they have gone out there to make all sorts of allegations before they come to the House. And by the way, even as they are saying that they want to ask questions, they start off by saying that if they don't get answers, they will take a second step. That almost sounds like they are already making up their mind even before they hear the minister out. We cannot run a democracy in which we don't give ourselves space to have an honest conversation and put all the facts on the table. I'm also happy to know that now the conversation is shaping up, and it's not as though this earlier claim that the DTT platform had been given to Star Times was true is what is now going on. You notice that everybody has now quietly moved from that initial allegation, which is totally untrue, now to talking about tax waivers for Star Times and whether or not it is unfair to other local players. I think that it's important at all points in time to situate conversations in their right context so that we can all get the answers that we are looking for. If they want to file questions, I think it's appropriate, and those answers will be made available to them.
Speaking of the engagement of the First Lady with Star Times, he thinks that there's a level of conflict of interest there. Is this something that your ministry is can speak to?
Yes, but you see, when somebody says there's conflict of interest, I'm hoping that you ask him to demonstrate to you what that conflict of interest is. Has he demonstrated to you what that conflicting interest is?
It's quite what he says is that it's quite curious that after the First Lady's engagement with Star Times in China, after that trip in China, she comes back, and then this deal is sort of triggers some kind of conversation.
This is total speculation, and you see, sometimes you allow people to throw things up in the air. So
which is why he's asking for what he's calling disclosure, full disclosure.
He has made an allegation of conflict of interest. That is not asking for disclosure. Let's not allow people to do this and get away with it. He has made an allegation of conflict of interest. You have to put him to proof to explain to you what that conflicting interest is.
Well, we have done that. We have done that, and we have asked him to clarify. But we're coming to you for
what is his explanation?
We're coming to you, Mr. Oppong-Nkrumah, for clarification. Help us, please.
Yes, and I want to respond specifically to it. So help me. What is the explanation of the conflicting interest that he's given?
We've spoken to a private legal practitioner who says that there isn't grounds for conflict of interest, but that it will be important to look at this engagement and whether or not it has any implication on the gift policy. But what I want,
but even be repeating the expression of conflict of interest.
But I wanted you to respond to that, Mr. Oppong-Nkrumah.
I understand you, but you're saying that you have spoken to a private legal practitioner who has told you that there's no conflict of interest. So let's stop even repeating it. The Office of the First Lady is not involved in any way in how Star Times goes about its commercial business. The Office of the First Lady has facilitated an exchange program between a Ghanaian school and a school in China. A company known as Star Times also decided to support that enterprise by giving the students who are going on that program some jerseys to go with. How on earth does this justify an allegation of conflict of interest? It doesn't. It doesn't at all, and we should not even elevate some of these allegations to conversations of this type. If people want to make allegations, please put them to strict proof, else tomorrow anybody will throw anything at you and get away with it.
Okay. Was a policy gift upheld in this transaction?
I'm sorry, come again?
Was a policy gift upheld in this transaction? Do you know?
A what? A policy gift?
Gift policy, I beg your pardon.
But the First Lady or the Office of the First Lady has not received any gift. These students who have benefited from an exchange program facilitated by her office are receiving jerseys from a company known as Star Times. It comes at no proprietary, personal, pecuniary benefit to the First Lady. She has not received any gift. And these things should not be encouraged, where people are given airtime to throw allegations and mud at people's hard-won reputations and get away with it, and then we invite other people to come and respond. The First Lady is doing an excellent job through her office, building hospitals, etc. I would expect that we would support her and push her work forward, and not to be throwing allegations at her like this.
So, Ms. Oppong Nkrumah, finally, before I let you go, with the debate, with the talk, the back and forth about this contract, is the Ministry of Communication, I don't know if you know this, is the Ministry of Communication doing anything about the
there are two different contracts here. Yes, there are two different, may I say, engagements here. One is the operating of the National Digital Terrestrial Platform. That is to be owned and operated by a state-run company. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that even no content provider will be given an opportunity to operate that. As to how we allow a claim, unsubstantiated, that digital backbone has been given to StarTimes to operate, and we have repeated it on the airwaves over and over again, it baffles me. And on that score, the Ministry of Communications has intimated that it continues in engagement with GIBA and all other stakeholders. There's a meeting coming up within the next about 8 days, and all stakeholders will be back to the table to continue with that exercise. That's number one. Number two,
Mr. Nkrumah, do make it brief for me, please.
Number two is an offer by one of the DTH providers. There's DSTV, there's MultiTV, there's StarTimes, there's several of them. One of them offered to construct free viewing centers across the country and requested for tax waivers for equipment associated with those free centers. That is the only tax waiver that the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana has granted. By the way, that initial transaction starts this year. It's been around for about 2 or 3 years now, and that is what the Parliament of Ghana has granted access about. Now, if anybody else, any of the other providers, desires to also assist, our people across the country and desires to have some support, whether it's Ghanaian or not, desires to have some support to set up some of these centers across the country, let him please come forward, and government will be willing to engage with that person.
Mr. Oppong Nkrumah, thank you so much for your time here on Top Story. Kojo Oppong Nkrumah is Minister for Information Designate. Top Story is brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion. GASM, the nation builder. Vodafone, the future is exciting. Ready? A nationwide medical health insurance, your healthcare family. My name is Gifty Ando Apia. MFA Apau is standing by with Newsnight.